So today on Doug's Secular Dharma, we're going to be discussing the word Dharma. What does it mean? Hi folks, so I'm Doug Smith, Study Director at the Secular Buddhist Association, that's secularbuddhism.org. And today we're going to discuss a bit about the word Dharma, particularly in the context of early Buddhism. So if you're interested in helping to make the world a wiser, a kinder, a less stressful place to be, consider subscribing to Doug's Secular Dharma. You can do it with various buttons and badges around. So the name of this channel is Doug's Secular Dharma. Part of the question is, what does that mean? What is Dharma? To get one simple thing out of the way, sometimes in these videos you'll hear me say the word Dharma, and sometimes you'll hear me say the word Dhamma. What do those mean? Why are we using two forms of the word? Simple answer is Dharma is a Sanskrit term, and Dhamma is a term in Pali. Pali is a dialect, basically, of Sanskrit. And so you'll hear me use both of these terms pretty much interchangeably. So there are various ways that the term Dharma is used, or Dhamma is used in the early texts. Probably the first of these I'll start with is Dhamma or Dharma with capital D. And in that context, what it really means, of course the capital D is something we would translate into. They didn't have capital letters, but it's something that we would translate into a term like law or natural law. It's the way the world works. So we can say that part of the Dharma is that all things change, is that the world is in a sense unsatisfactory. It doesn't ever give us a perfect satisfaction. That things arise based on causes and conditions. These are all aspects of the Dharma understood in that fashion. We also say that it's also said in the early texts that the Buddha sort of awoke to or became understood this kind of eternal or everlasting Dharma of the world, that these things that always had been and always would be, that change is eternal, change continues forever. And in later traditions it was understood that Buddhas arise over the eons, many Buddhas over the eons. They also have awaked to the same kind of Dharma, the same kind of truth. Now in a related sense, we use the word Dharma to mean the teaching of the Buddha, of the historical Buddha. So often we might use the word Buddha Dharma. That is the teaching of the Buddha. And this is to distinguish it from the teachings of other religious or philosophical teachers at the time and later. Because Dharma is a word in general usage in India, in ancient India, and even in more modern India. And it's used for the teachings of all religions. It's used for the truth that all religions proclaim. The Buddha would have taught the Buddha Dharma, but there would have also been Dharma of the Jains, another religious community, Dharma of the Brahmins that eventually became Hindu Dharma. And so there's a sense in which the word Dharma is used as the Buddha's teaching. Also, in a related sense, it's the path. The Buddha's path is the path of Dharma. The path, an ethical path, a path of right action, of right speech, right livelihood, right thinking. That's the Dharmic path. Basically a path of good behavior. Now that can be understood as something specific to the Buddha, or it can be understood in a more general sense. So somebody who's behaving ethically is behaving in accordance with the Dharma, even if they haven't heard anything about the Buddha, even if they're ignorant of the Buddha's teachings in particular. And so, the Buddha does talk in the texts about ethical kingship or ethical leadership, which in his day would have been kings. And he uses the word Dhammaraja or Dharmaraja, which is a Dharma king. And that is a leader who leads ethically. And there's no reason to believe from the text that this king would have had to know anything about the Buddha in particular. That's not really relevant. What is relevant is that he leads in a certain way, in an ethical way. But it's a path of generosity, of renunciation, of kindness, and in general of wisdom. Finally, there's a sense of dharmas, we could say in the plural dharmas, in English we would say with a little d dharmas. And these are aspects of lived reality. Probably the most famous text on mindfulness meditation, the Satipatthana Sutta, at the last section of that long sutta, he talks about mindfulness of the dharmas. And this is that we should be aware of these various states of lived reality as they come up in the mind. So for example, we should be aware of the hindrances when they arise. We should be aware of a state of aversion or ill will as it arises in the mind. Now that state is itself a dharma. It's one of the dharmas that might arise. It arises, it passes. So a state of a particular smell that we have, a particular sight, a particular sound, those are all understood as dharmas. They're aspects, they're qualities of lived reality that are impermanent, that arise for a time and then pass away. And in the later Buddhist tradition, termed the Abhidharma or Abhidhamma, these aspects of lived reality were systematized and correlated and causally interrelated in various complex ways. A lot of this does go back to the early teachings. We do find, of course, aspects of all of that in the early teachings, but it becomes much more systematized, much more scholastic in the Abhidharma tradition. The Abhidharma itself, it's a compilation of the early teachings in a systematized way so that we can understand it much more easily just by reading these particular texts that structure all the interactions between dharmas in a formalized fashion. And perhaps most importantly, all dharmas are understood to be non-self. That is to say, as we see these dharmas arise and pass within experience, none of them can be identified with ourself. Analyzing the world into these dharmas increases our wisdom. Seeing the way these dharmas arise and pass, again, increases our wisdom. It increases our ability to see the world accurately for what it really is, as opposed to thinking of experienced things as somehow permanent. Behaving in a dharmic fashion increases our kindness because it involves our seeing the world in a more skillful way, and understanding that other people's pain becomes our own pain over time. And finally, being aware of the arising and passing of phenomena, as well as skillfully interacting with other people, just will decrease our ordinary stress in life. So an understanding of Dharma and Dharmas within an early Buddhist context is, I think, critical to our path towards wisdom, kindness, and lessening stress. So how do you see the dharmas in your life, or the dharma in your life? What does the word mean to you? It has so many meanings in the early tradition, and today even more within contemporary society. How do you use the term? Put all of your questions and comments in the sections down below. Really glad to hear anything you have to say. So if you're new to the channel, welcome, really glad to have you here. And if you're returning again, really glad to have you return. And we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks a lot.